guys, I'm Myra with Atomic Baby Cosplay, and today I'm going to be talking about my top tips to avoid fraying. So my first tip is to use pinking shears. Pinking shears are these bad boys. I love them, they're great. What they do is they make a little tiny, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but little tiny triangle teeth. So when you are using them on fabric, they create a pinked triangle edge. And what that does is it stops your fibers from being able to fray quite so much, because instead of being able to fray in a straight line going straight down, they're kind of broken up and it makes it really challenging for the fabric to fray itself. So they won't completely stop fraying, especially on more fray prone fabrics like chiffon or organza, but they will make a big difference in terms of trying to help. They're very easy to use. You just cut just like scissors and they make that shape. They have a harder time going through thicker fabrics because they aren't able to be quite so sharp as regular shears are, but they're really nice for finishing inside edges. So when I say finishing inside edges, what I mean is when you sew a seam, usually you'll press it open or you'll press it flat or you'll do something with it, right? Well, if you're pressing it open, you're going to be splitting that fabric up, so you can't really overlock the edge of that fabric. So pinking shears are a great option to finish those edges that you're going to be pressing open, since you won't be able to overlock them together. You can overlock them individually, but that can be more challenging. Pinking shears are a great way to kind of minimize the fraying on something that you don't necessarily need to stress about too much, like a cotton. Now, when it comes to seams that you're going to be pressing open or pressing flat or things like that, what you can do is you can finish your pieces before you even sew them together. And so what I mean is that you can go through on your machine and do a single layer overlock stitch on the edge of your fabric all the way around. So go all the way around all the edges of your pattern piece, and then your pattern piece is completely finished. All the edges are finished and it'll have a really hard time fraying. Bonus points if you do this with pinking shears. But when you sew it together, then both your edges are already finished. So when you have to press your seam flat, you're not losing some of that anti-fray capability because you've already finished the edges before you even sewed it together. My next tip is going to be to use either fray block, which is this guy here, or fray check. Now, fray check I find to be a little bit thicker. It tends to work a little bit more gluey-ish, if that makes sense. It also can discolor your fabric, I find. Now, that doesn't really matter on some fabrics. It works really, really well on, say, like brocades if you do it on the inside where it's not going to touch the outside seams of your fabric. However, it does create a hard plasticky kind of edge and it's not soft anymore. And that can be irritating to your skin. So I like to use fray check only on sections where it's going to be inside an enclosed seam or it's not going to be touching me or visible, because it does discolor fabric and it can leave like a hard plastic kind of edge. Fray block, on the other hand, you heat up and you want to shake, and this runs much more like water, and I find it has a much softer finish, so it doesn't dry quite so plasticky and hard. It feels almost like fabric, only it stops your fabric from fraying. It's not 100% perfect, but it's a great way to kind of give yourself some more insurance, especially on, say, a sheer weight fabric where there's not as much you can do because you don't want to add a ton of thread and overlock and things like that, because it will make your fabric not look as beautiful as it could, since it is a sheer weight. So fray block is a great option for that. And then lastly, what I kind of touched on already is that you can enclose your seams. So you can do a full lining on the inside. That'll reduce fraying just because your fabric is no longer being exposed to something that's going to rub against it. The linings tend to stay kind of in place, especially if they've been top stitched really thoroughly. But super fray prone fabrics can still fray, like brocade. It can still cause fraying even if it's fully lined on the inside, but it is a good option for some things. You can also do French seams, which is where you sew the seam with your wrong sides together, and then you flip it and you sew it right sides together, and it ends up completely encasing your seam. You can do this within the seam allowance by doing a 2/8 inch seam for your first seam and a 3/8 inch seam for your second seam, and then you've got a French seam that fits within that 5/8 inch guide that most patterns allow. French seams are really great for kind of maintaining your fabric and not letting it get destroyed. Again, they're not foolproof, but they are a really good kind of step in the right direction. So I hope those tips help some of you guys. You can combine them in different ways, like use fray block and French seams and pinking shears in order to get even more fray-proof fabric. And the more layers that you do, the less likely your fabric is to fray. I don't find any of these methods to be 100% foolproof. Fabric will still fray, but if you combine them all, you can get pretty much fray-proof fabric, but sometimes it's not necessary. Like on a cotton dress or a simple shirt, I don't really stress about it too much. But if it's something where it's a cosplay I really care about and it's a really delicate fabric, I will spend more time making sure that it doesn't fray. So with that, I'm all done, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, definitely click subscribe. I do videos on Tuesdays and Thursday on a cosplay or sewing topic. Give me a thumbs up also because it helps me. And if you want to learn more about sewing and cosplay, I have a community over on Facebook. I'll leave a description in the bar down below. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!